Uh, the day has went by fast, so it's 1:20, and we'll go ahead and we'll get started. Um, Chip, I'll start by introducing you, and as I have done earlier today, uh, uh, Chip Southworth spent 7 years as a curriculum and instructional supervisor for Scott County Schools, 8 years as a high school principal and assistant principal at Scott County High School, 12 years as social studies teacher at Scott County High School, has 5 years of experience as an adjunct professor of teaching methods at Georgetown College, and 7 years of experience as an independent professional development presenter. And Chip, I'm looking very forward to hearing from you, and I'm glad to turn things over to you.
Well, always thank you, and Joanna and Whitney. As others join, we'll invite them in there, but I appreciate you selecting this one. I'm going to take a second and put just a PowerPoint to kind of keep me on pace here. But see if it's on there. First of all, I want to thank you for choosing this one. You have a list of wonderful things to choose from. You chose this one. What my goal is when you leave this session is that you will create a culture in your school that's more perseverant, self-reliant, not just with your kids, but with your teachers, yourself, everybody in it. I found the book by Carol Dweck, Mindsets, probably about 4 or 5 years before I retired. And originally I bought it for my youngest son, who was classified as gifted and talented as a young child. And sometimes when you make or identify a kid as gifted and talented, those kids no longer think they have to work hard. And he was truly talented and truly gifted. What I needed to work on was his work ethic. I was blessed. I had 2 parents. Both of them came from big families, both born during the Great Depression. Both of them, neither one of them had much education whatsoever, but they gave me great work ethic. So I was blessed to have both a work ethic built into me and a great education through public education. What I think now is a lot of our students have a great education, but what they're lacking is the work ethic. And what we're going to do in this session is help you find ways that you can specifically help your teachers, your students develop a work ethic. Because quite honestly, whatever you teach, math, science, English, social studies, health, PE, it's important. But if kids come out of your school without a work ethic, with what I call learned helplessness, then all that's going to go pretty much to the waste. If you have a kid that can come out with a work ethic, they'll be fine. They'll figure it out. And that's what we're going to try to help you with. To start you off with just a simple John Maxwell quote. Thank you for being part of this, because like Maxwell said, was the single biggest way to impact an organization is to focus on leadership development. By the fact that you're listening to me, that you listen to all these speakers today and interacted with them, you grew yourself today. What I often did as high school principal is I forgot myself. I worried about this teacher, this custodian, this secretary, and forgot to develop myself. The biggest thing to make your organization grow is to make sure you're focusing on your own personal growth. And the fact that you took time to do this today is going to help you with that. I have a couple of learning targets for today. The first is to understand the difference between fixed and growth mindset. Many of you all may have done this before. You've done growth mindset. What my goal with this is to make sure we all have a fairly simple understanding of the basics so we can apply it in a couple of things. We will apply this to your school. I will talk at you for a few minutes, but most of this is going to be you all helping me understand how you can help your school. What I always say is there's a lot more experience listening to me right now than is talking. What I need to help you all is to be able to share these ideas so you can help each other. We'll talk about leadership methods to help assist leaders or educators with different skill levels and mindsets. In your school right now, I guarantee you have teachers that have a growth mindset and they're a highly skilled teacher. You have teachers that are highly skilled and have a fixed mindset. You have teachers in your school that don't have a lot of skill, but they have a growth mindset. And you also have teachers that have a fixed mindset and a low skill level. What I'm going to help you do is specifically help one of those group and give you a tool to help the others. And the last thing we'll do is look at the inventory list to kind of help you look at the way you do things and your policy, your procedures, your places, and how you can help that become more of a growth mindset situation. Just real quick about me. You talked about me a minute ago, so you got all that on the side, but up in the top left, that's my oldest son as director of secondary education. I was blessed to give both my sons their diploma. On the bottom is my youngest son, Lucas. Lucas is the reason I bought the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. He is an extremely talented kid. One thing, when Lucas graduated college, he had a degree in theater. Went to Cincinnati, tried to get some work in theater up there, and for about a year and a half worked at Half Price Books. For a year and a half, Lucas was hungry. And what we had to tell our son was, we're going to let you be hungry, but we're not going to let you starve. That's what we have to be able to help some of your teachers sometimes. Sometimes you're going to have to let them make mistakes. You're going to have to let them struggle, because through that struggle, they're going to get stronger. He now works for Xavier University. He's very successful, but he had to go through that struggle first. If we ran up there and saved him all the time, Lucas would not have been as successful as he is. On the right in the bottom, my wife, Beth, she is a retired English teacher. We met because they assigned both of us to teach a class together. We taught American Studies together. And we had taught 2 hours, and as luck have it, we ended up getting married in Middlesboro, Kentucky. In the top right is everything that's important to me in my life. You have my 2 sons, my 2 daughter-in-laws, my wife, and my 2 dogs. And that's just, and we'll talk at the very end how to kind of prioritize yourself through all this. We'll skip this, but the one thing I want to talk about that I really do think that successful leaders and successful teachers do is let people that work with them know that they're not perfect. If you want your teachers to fight through a struggle, you need to let them know at some point in their life, it was hard on them too. It was hard on you also. You did not get to your position in life just by showing up. You got to your position by making mistakes. You got to your position by taking challenges, by the effort you made. You got by accepting criticism. And one of the best examples I have is, this is from a teacher in Scott County High School, or Scott County Schools at Ann Mason Elementary. She has this out in the wall, and I love this because I think we can learn this teacher, one of the most foundational components of growth mindset. The quote says, when you take risk, you learn that there will be times when you succeed and there will be times when you fail, and both are equally important. Ellen DeGeneres. And how she uses this is every week, a student will, on a piece of paper, will write something down that they struggled with and write something down that they were successful in. And those little white dots on there have the child's name, and they put it on that clip. And that teacher takes a kid out one by one and talks to them about that success. But what they really focus on is that child's struggle. And they make all over the fact that that child was willing to struggle. Because if you're not willing to struggle, you're not willing to grow. In your life, you got to make a choice. Either you're going to be comfortable or you're going to grow. In my life, I've never been able to do both. If I'm comfortable, I haven't been growing. But if I've been growing, I haven't been comfortable. This teacher understands that. But the coolest thing she does on the very top left one is her name. On the very top left, she writes something she's successful with and something she struggles with. The kids learn that she too struggles. Once that child learns that teacher also struggles, then they're more willing to take chances and struggle. If they think that teacher's perfect, they're less likely to take a chance and struggle, because they think if they don't get it right the first time, it doesn't look good. Allow an avenue for your kids to struggle. The next slide I'm going to show you on there where you can get this. If you go back to the first diagram that has all the programs on there, if you click the mindset diagram, you will get this diagram. And what I want to do is real quickly go through this diagram, and then we're going to apply it to a couple things that you can use it right now in your school. Carol Dweck, who wrote Mindset, said there's two mindsets. There's a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Fixed mindset people believe either you have the ability to do something innate. In other words, either you can be a musician or you can't. Either you can be an artist or you can't. Either you can do math or you can't. Growth mindset people believe all of us have a little talent, and if you work at it, if you put diligent work and effort into it, you can do almost anything you want. Now, there are limits to that, but for the most part, you can take your talent and at least reach your potential with it. And I always use this example of what a fixed mindset looks like in your school. If you've ever been to a parent-teacher conference, and I know Joanne is a counselor, and you've probably heard this before, you have all the teachers sitting around. You have a math, science, English, social studies, health, PE, all the teachers sitting there. And the mom comes in with her son, and the comment she will say is, "No wonder he can't do math. Nobody in my family can do math." What she just told her son was that there's a math gene and you ain't got it. What that child now knows is that there's no reason for me even to work in this class because my mom just told me, because no matter how hard I work, I'm not going to get there. That's a fixed mindset. That's hard to overcome. Growth mindset people understand if you put the work into it, if you listen to coaching and criticism, if you fight through obstacles, you can achieve almost anything you want to. But it's a mindset. Carol Dweck said there's 5 things to look at when determining if a person has a fixed or growth mindset. And we're going to come back to this chart to use this chart on a couple of activities we're going to do in a minute. The first thing is how people deal with challenges. Fixed mindset people, once they get comfortable, do not want a new challenge. I guarantee you've known teachers who've taught the same lesson plans for years because they're comfortable there. They don't want to use any new technology. They don't want to try any new methods. They want to do it the same way they did it 12 years ago because they had some success with it. I guarantee you know kids who have made all A's in English 1, made all A's in English 2. We ask them to take advanced placement in junior year, and they say no. I want to be a place where I can make sure I can make my A. They want to be in their comfort zone. Growth mindset people look for new challenges. Growth mindset students are kids who may have made B's and C's in English 1 and 2, but still want to take advanced placement because they want to push themselves. Growth mindset teachers are teachers who try new methods. They're teachers that go for national board certification. They're teachers that work and find new ways to do things. Even if it doesn't work, they try it. The second thing she talks about is obstacles. Fixed mindset people, if they do take a challenge, if we do get that student to take advanced placement in their junior year, the first time they hit an obstacle, they will want to go back where they're comfortable. Growth mindset people understand once you fight through that obstacle, you will be stronger when you come out the other side. We do this with athletes. As a coach, and I coached for a number of years, we will put a kid on a weight bench and continue to put weight on there until that kid can no longer push that weight off their chest. We work with them and come back a few weeks later, and almost 90% of the time that kid can lift more weight because they fight through that obstacle. That's where the strength comes from. Once you fight through an obstacle, you become stronger. Fixed mindset people don't want to put the work in to fight through the obstacle. The third thing Carol Dweck talks about is effort. And she said, actually, this is the cornerstone of all of this. Fixed mindset people don't think it looks cool to work hard. They want to show up and be good at something. They don't want to put the effort in to be great. Growth mindset people understands if you want to be great, you have to put work into it. There's an old saying that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Growth mindset people understand that. It's the effort you have to put in there. Some people don't understand what that effort really looks like. Be a great principal, be a great counselor. They have no idea the effort you all put to get there. The fourth thing she talks about is criticism. Fixed mindset people if you criticize them, they're not coachable. Now, my theory is none of us like to be criticized. It's what you do with the criticism. I once evaluated a teacher at my high school. It was a very poor evaluation. The whole time he kept saying, well, you don't like me. The kids don't like me. I don't have the materials I need. He went through a laundry list of things why he wasn't successful. Now look back up at that chart. What that teacher then became was my challenge. And to get him to where I needed to be, I was going to have to fight through obstacles and put a lot of effort into it. This chart applies to you as you're trying to put in new things in your school. Growth mindset people may not like to be criticized, but they understand to get better at something, they have to listen to criticism and they will get better from that. The last one she talked about, success of others. Fixed mindset people want to be a big fish in a small pond. They do not want to put better competition around them. They want to be successful all the time. I heard Todd Whitaker talking this morning about being a tennis player. If you want to be a great tennis player, you got to play tennis players that are better than you. Growth mindset people do that. They surround themselves with people that are better than them. Whitney, I worked with, the two assistant principal I had at Scott County High School are now superintendents. One's in Oldham County, and Mike Stacy, my old wife, is in Beechwood. I became a better leader because I put people with equal or more talent around me. Growth mindset people understand that. And I add one to the bottom. And what I want you to do in your chat, I just want you to put a number here for a second. If you're on vacation and you get on your phone and you Google places to eat near me, and it starts to grind and that wheel starts to go around, how many seconds do you give it until you click off onto something else? So just type a number in for me real quick. All right, so let's see what I have here. Whitney gives it 5 seconds. Wallace gives it 3. Joanna, you're not a liar, you're an outlier. 20 seconds is much longer than the average person does. Google knows how long you'll take. Google says you'll get 8 seconds. Now, if you notice, I'll teach you a little bit about Google. Google does not say you do not get the Mexican restaurant nearest you. You get the Mexican restaurant near you. You know, you don't think you're paying for Google, you're paying for Google. The ones that come up on top of that list, they pay to be on top of that list. So when you go to that Mexican restaurant and get an enchilada, you're paying extra for that enchilada because they're on that Google restaurants near you. A lot of people think Google's free. It's an indirect cost. That's how Google's a multi-billion-dollar industry. You write that down and just think of that. Now, if we go back 30 years ago, when AOL was just first coming out, we were so excited when we could get any kind of piece of technology. Well, it took 3 to 4 minutes to sign in. It took 2 minutes for a picture to show up. Now, if we don't get something in 5, 3, or 20 seconds, we click off onto something else. The cell phone has more computing capacity than put a man on the moon in 1969. We have that in our pocket. But what this has created is a culture of instant gratification. And that's what I want you to think about on process. Fixed mindset people want instant gratification. They want to get a new instrument in band. They want to try a new technique as a teacher, and they want it to be perfect instantly. Growth mindset people understand delayed gratification. To be great at anything takes time. It takes effort. It takes thinking through the process and getting better at it. Growth mindset people let the process take place. Part of the process is taking the challenge. Part of the process is failing. Part of the process is fighting back and finding a new struggle. Fixed mindset people don't want to let that process go through. Now, think of students you have in your school. Most every kid in your school, this is only about, I think 2007 was the first iPhone. The first smartphone came out 16 years ago. Almost every kid in your school does not know a world without that in it. Having said that, they already want instant gratification. It's not their fault. It's just the process that they've been born with. If we can teach kids delayed gratification, we can teach teachers how to develop delayed gratification, these kids will be so much more successful. One of my favorite quotes is a quote by Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass said, if there's no struggle, there's no progress. Just stop there for a minute. If you want to get stronger physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, you have to go through a struggle. You cannot get better unless you are willing to struggle. We have to help people accept that struggle. Now, what I want to do is now I want to apply some of this to your teachers at this point right now. What you see is a chart, and I use this with teachers. When I use it with teachers, we talk about students. When I use it with administrators, we talk about teachers. Think about each teacher in one of these quadrants as I go around and talk about it. This first top left quadrant, growth high skill. This is a teacher in your school that is very good at the methods that they teach, at the content that they know it very well, and have a growth mindset. That teacher is very valuable in your school. Then go to the top right one. This teacher has a lot of skill at what they do. They know their content. They have strong basic methods, but they have a fixed mindset, meaning that if you ask them to take a new challenge, they're not probably going to do that. If you ask them to fight through an obstacle, they're going to go back to their own methods. They're going to work hard at what they do, but they don't want to try to do anything to push themselves to grow. The bottom left's the one we're going to focus on. This teacher has a growth mindset, but they have a low skill level. They could be a first or second year teacher. They could be a teacher who's been teaching for you for a while, but their mindset is strong. They're willing to take on new challenges. They're willing to fight through obstacles. They're willing to put the effort in. They're willing to listen to criticism, but their skill level's just low. So this is what I want you to do. And I want to give you about a minute and a half to do this. Is think about that teacher in the bottom left and go back to the chart, this chart here, and use the column on the right side there where it says embraces challenges, persist to face feedback or setbacks. What I want you to do is just take a minute and a half, and I want you to type it into your comments. And Wallace, if you'll do that with us too, just describe that teacher. Take a minute and a half, think about that teacher, and write some descriptive terms that describes a teacher that has a growth mindset but a low skill level. So just take a minute and a half about that, and we'll come back and talk about it. Joanna, thank you for your descriptors. We'll wait for a couple more on there so we can talk about it as a group. All right, Joanna, kind of unmute yourself and talk me through that. What do you think about when you think about that teacher?
I just think she has the right attitude. She's open-minded. She tries new ideas. She's fair and kind, and the students really like her a lot.
When you think it, do you have teachers in mind at your school that are like that right now?
Yes, we do.
And what we're going to talk about in a minute is how we're going to help this teacher. So Whitney, kind of add on to that. What do you see when you see this teacher?
I see the desire to do well. Sometimes it's missing skill sets. So I said lacks organization. Sometimes it's not knowing where to start to tackle that creative project they have in their mind.
And I love how you say that. They have something creative, something they really want to do, but they do not have the skill set. They do not have the methods to know how to put that on the road to getting to where they want to. Wallace, add to that. What do you think about when you see that teacher?
I said that in terms of, high or having a growth mindset with a low skill set. Those teachers, have to be willing to try new things despite difficulties when doing so. So, we learn through those challenges, as you've said. And also, I said, able to recognize strengths and build on those while accepting criticism constructively. There's real value in criticism, and being able to take that on is very important. And so that's kind of the aim that I'm going with.
Excellent. And going back to the criticism thing that Wallace talked about, is it depends on the relationship you have with that teacher. If you have the appropriate relationship, and when I talk to teachers, I tell them what the appropriate relationship is. I really work with teachers, especially at middle school and high school, that we got to get out of the mindset that we have to be these kids' buddy. What I really want these teachers to be is their mentor. We need to be this teacher whose their words impeccable. That if you say you're going to do something, you're going to do something. If you're going to be there for them, you're going to be there for them. That takes time. That's a process. Some teachers want to take the shortcut and they want to be the kid's buddy. That falls short when that kid really needs you sometimes. So think about that relationship. And I heard the gentleman, I've forgotten the guy that spoke before us here a minute ago, but he talked about that, about meaningful feedback. When you're getting your teachers meaningful feedback, you will start to develop that relationship with them. So this is what I want you to do now. Since that teacher is that way, since they, let's go back to what you all said. They're kind, fun, open-minded, creative. They lack confidence, willing to try new things. They lack organization. They're able to recognize strengths and build on those, accepting criticism constructively. Think about this then, and I will have some things in the next couple of slides to help you with this, but I want to hear you all first. Type me a couple ways. How do we help this teacher? How do we lead this teacher? How do we get the most out of it? So take a minute and a half, think about that, and just type a couple of things down, how we best help this teacher get that skill set, get to where they need to be, and be a successful teacher. So take a minute and a half to that, and we'll come back and talk about it. About 30 more seconds. All right, Joanna, talk to me about connecting them with good teacher. Joanna, you may be still on mute. Try one more time if you're trying. Wallace, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Talk to me about your rapport as a major element. What were you saying there?
Yeah. So I'm not sure if Joanna might be having an issue, and if
Okay.
she is, she might want to message in the chat and just let us know. Yeah, I said rapport is a major element of the work, and it's important to build strong relationships with those teachers. It's always important to have strong relationships, to be able to discuss difficult topics, to be able to provide criticism, to be able to mentor, to be able to support. It's a major element.
Excellent. Excellent. That's right. If the rapport you have with all your teachers, but especially this group, because there a lot of time these teachers are millennials, and we're going to talk about millennials here in a minute. But to help that teacher through, they're going to have to trust you. They're going to have to be able to fail and take on challenges in a safe place. Joanna, can you hear me? All right. So what I want to do is real quickly, as last week, I kind of looked back through a book that I really enjoy. It's called Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. And what he said, the best way to help millennials was number one is you got to get mentor and support them. And that's what I think Joanna was saying there. You got to connect them with good teacher mentors. So that's number one. Number two is lead by examples. The way you act, the way you present yourself in that school, those teachers are looking at you as a leader. If you gossip a lot, they'll gossip a lot. If you come dressed messily, they'll come dressed that way. If you come dressed as a professional, they're more likely to come dressed as a professional. Talk to them about failures. We discussed that earlier. Talking about times when you struggled and needed help. Give them opportunity to fail. Let them fail in a safe place. If we beat them down every time they fail, then they're not going to take chances and they're going to stay as a mediocre teacher. Give them the opportunity to develop human skills. A lot of millennials have been raised in a social media atmosphere in which they do not know how to work with others very well. If you give them the skills to develop human skills that help them fight, like I gave the first group an example. When I first became assistant principal, one of the most hated things I would do was call disciplinary issues. And a lot of times I'd get in an argument with the parents. And the reason was the way I started is I did not have good human skills on how to call and talk to a parent whose kid's been in trouble. I usually would say, your kid has done X, Y, Z. We're going to have to suspend him. We're going to have to do this and this, that, and the other. So the principal, my head principal at the time, so let me make a call. And all he did differently is when he made that call, he said, this is the principal of Scott County High School. We want to make your kids successful. Can you help us? Just starting it that way changes the whole atmosphere of that message. And I just listened to him talk to a parent who I've talked to before and struggled with and get successful because of it. Developing human skills and especially the growth mindset, low skill teacher will help them a lot. Take a chance on them. Let them make mistakes. Let them, step out and be their advocate when they make mistakes. And the last thing, what I really liked what he's saying here is if you think about it, and Joanna, you said you've been in education quite a while, and I have too. But I remember when I started, I never thought for a minute that I was ever going to be principal of the high school, or I never thought I was going to be director of secondary at Scott County Schools. The young leaders you have right now, the growth mindset, low skill teachers that you have in your building right now, years from now are going to be the principals, going to be the superintendents of schools. The young teachers I had in my building are now principals in Scott County High Schools, principals in elementaries, principals and directors in central office. Realize that you're building these leaders. The other slide I'm going to show you real quickly is show you another way of looking at this. Oops, let me go back. When I work with teachers, I do the exact same diagram. But the bottom left is not teachers, it's students. These are students that have a growth mindset and a low skill. And I've done this activity a number of times with teachers. And why I've compiled a list to have a number of the similar things that teachers said. But think about this. This also applies to the teachers in your building, their growth mindset and a low skill level. Praise it when they work hard. What I teach, one of the cornerstones of growth mindset is to praise work ethic. Do not praise talent. Either you believe in a higher being, you believe in DNA, somehow or another, somebody has talent. What I truly believe is you have a very little effect on their talent. What you have effect on is their work ethic. If someone has talent and work ethic, they can do almost anything they want. Praise them when they work hard. Scaffold instruction, same as a kid, the same as a teacher. If a teacher is struggling in 4 or 5 things, let's work on one of them. If a teacher is struggling on starting class on time and doing a good job in the first 5 minutes of class, let's get better at that. Then we can work on something else, but scaffold that instruction. Find areas of high skill. Somebody said that. Find places where these teachers are good and build up on that. Be patient with them. This is a process. Remember, the last thing I said on growth and fixed mindset is being willing to go through the process. This teacher is a very valuable part of your school system, valuable part of your school. Be patient with them. It's going to take time for them to develop into the teacher you want them to be, but that patience is worth it. Joanna said this, possibly pair this with a growth high skill person. If a teacher cannot start their class well in the first 5 minutes, bring a teacher in for just the first 5 minutes and help them develop that skill. That was one of the biggest things I worked with new teachers, is really focusing that first 5 minutes, that the expectation is when you come into my class, you're going to work hard. If you can get that new teacher with that mindset that I'm going to really focus this first 5 minutes, that if I put a bell ringer on the board, I'm expecting every kid to work on it. Instead of making it optional, you change the whole mindset in that classroom. Work with those teachers on that. Let them make positive mistakes. Praise them for incremental growth. If a teacher makes a little bit of growth, like the gentleman said before us, give them specific praise. This is what you've done better. Same thing with kids. Safe environment. I think this is the most important as leaders. Give that teacher a safe place to make mistakes, to take new challenges, and to be wrong. Praise them when they try something new. If we only tear them down when they make a mistake, you're not creating a safe atmosphere. Build relationships, what Walsh just said there. The rapport with these kids are the most important, and give them time to process. So what I want to do now is take it a little bit deeper into your school. And I think we have some new participants in here, so thank you for being here. What we are going to do is look at this chart, and if you go back to my website, you can find where it says administrative chart. But this is what I really do believe, and like this morning, it was so good because we literally had teachers from Paducah all the way to Floyd County this morning. And what I've told this group before you all came in just a minute ago is there's much more experience, much more knowledge listening to my voice than who is speaking right now. So I'm going to need your help with this. So if you look at this, if you go to the link on my website, you'll see 6 or 7 of these. I just copied the first 3: staff meetings, hiring, and evaluations. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to take just about a minute, and I want you to think about something you're doing in your school already with either your staff meetings, your hiring, or evaluations. You don't have to do all 3, just do one. But what's one thing in your staff meetings that's building the growth mindset in your school? Think about how you helping people accept new challenges, fight through obstacles, praising effort, learning how to deal with criticism, how to accept the process. So take a minute in the comments, and then we're going to use that to discuss, and then we're going to tie all this together at the end with some personal stuff to help you as a leader in your school. So take a minute, choose any one of those 3, type a few things and things you're already doing well in your school, develop a growth mindset in one of these 3. And I'll mute it and give you a minute to do that. Okay, if the new ones, if you don't mind, just add one or two more and we'll talk about it. Give you about 30 more seconds. Again, this will help each other in doing this. Okay, one thing I work when I work with teachers is the very first thing I work with every teacher group is questioning techniques. And I really do believe the way you use questioning in your class can either create a growth or fixed mindset, the way you use questioning. And what I love doing the chat is one thing that I really work with teachers is to limit hand raising as much as possible. What I think we find if we only call on kids that raise their hand, you will quickly create a fixed mindset classroom because only students who can think quickly, only students who raise their hand will do the work. The other kids will lose that expectation that they have to work, that they can sit here as long as they want to and not have to answer anything. The other thing I teach is as kids are writing down answers, go and find the kid that doesn't say a whole lot and catch them being right. That's easy to do with this chat. And if you can get that kid to have success in your class because they worked and now they had success, but they took longer to process, that's okay. A lot of times when I work with parent groups, I will ask them, how old is the kid when we give up on teaching them how to walk? And I will have parents just look at me. That's right. We don't give up because that's an important life skill. Some kids learn to walk at 10 months. Some kids learn to walk at 15 months. But I guarantee you do not have kids walking through your middle school that says, I learned to walk at 10 months. They don't know when they learn to walk. Just because a kid learned to walk at an older age doesn't mean they're less important than the kids that learn to walk at a younger age. Same thing with learning material in your class. Just because it takes them longer to process doesn't make them less valuable. What I also do is I'll go by and I'll tell that kid, I'm going to call on you in a minute. Now that kid's worked for you, they've had some success, they understand that you're praising their work ethic and not kids' talent in your school. So Joanna, if you talk to me a little bit, what's it look like when you share successes in your staff meeting? What do you all do? We may be having a problem with Wallace, if you don't mind, talk to me about what you wrote, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had mentioned, I don't work in a school environment. I work at KDE in communications. We take time to reflect often. We have weekly division meetings. And so one thing that we do each month, we look at our Twitter analytics. And so our goal is to see the types of content that gain the most traction so that we are able to promote the positive work happening across Kentucky's districts and schools. And it's interesting how it varies sometimes from month to month, but in all, it allows us to grow. It's part of the growth mindset we have here.
Excellent. By doing that, you're self-evaluating, you're seeing what's pushing you to grow and what's making you better. And what I really do think these two charts you can take back to your schools and you can start thinking about, first of all, praise things that you're already doing well. What we forget to do sometimes is praise ourselves for doing things the right way. But then start looking at what's one thing in the hiring process. It could be the way you do questioning. It could be the questions you ask. It could be the way you vet your candidates. It could be a number of things, but how can you create a system in your school that when you hire teachers, you have more likely to have teachers coming with a growth mindset? Evaluations, how are they being used? Are they being used as a gotcha, or do you built a relationship with your teachers to say, the reason I'm doing this is to make you better? If I make you better, the kids are going to learn more and we're all going to be more successful. If you make evaluations a thing that teachers don't feel safe, then they will see that as only as a tool to evaluate them. If you can make evaluations as a system to make it that teachers can get better and you're looking to find them to reach their potential. Then evaluations are used in a growth mindset way. The major point I make with this also is when you go through this list, be careful in trying to do too many things. Find 1 or 2 things and get a lot better at them. Don't try to do 5, 6, 7 things. Let's get better at one thing. Get better at it, praise yourself, celebrate it, make incremental growth, then get better at something else. Too often when we try to get better at things, we try to find, well, here's a laundry list of 8 things. You're not going to get better at 8 things. You'll get better at 1 or 2 things and focus on that. So to kind of take that, I've got, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but one of my favorite books I've read in the last year is Atomic Habits by James Clear. If you read Atomic Habits, he basically talks about if you have goals, goals are important. But if you do not have strong habits, you're not going to reach those goals. And he says the most important thing to do when you set goals are 4 things. First is to make it obvious. 2 is to make it attractive. 3 is to make it easy. And 4 is to make it satisfying. If you're not willing to change your habits, you're not going to reach your goals. For instance, if I have 5 goals in my life that I have now. It's faith, family, finance, intellectual, and what's the other one? Fitness. Faith, family, fitness, finance, and intellectual. One of my goals is to read the Bible every day. One thing I do is I have an app on my phone every day. A Bible verse will come up. It's easy, it's obvious, it's attractive, it's simple to do. You'll be amazed if you read 365 verses a day, how much of the Bible you can get in. Same way with my fitness. There's things I do that make it obvious and satisfying that if I do this, that I get to do this. But I'm going to give you a couple of examples within the administrative, and I've got to move a few things around here, so to help you as administrator. When I was principal of Scott County High School, if you don't know much about Scott County High School, when I was principal, we were the biggest high school in the state of Kentucky. And we had a huge back parking lot that had student parking in it. And one day I was walking to observe a teacher, and a teacher came up to me. It was right before first hour, came up to me and said, "Did you see who's in that back parking lot?" And she mentioned the kid's name. That kid has not been to school in a week. I know he doesn't have a parking pass. What are you going to do about it? And I thought about that for a minute. Do I drop everything I do right now, go chase down a kid who I'm actually happy is in class right now, or do I go on and evaluate this teacher? And what I had to do is decide what my base values were as an educator. And I thought to myself, I can be the best parking lot principal in the state of Kentucky if I want to. I can have these kids lined up alphabetically. I can have every kid point in the same direction. I can spend all that time I want to. If you do that, you're not going to have any energy for what your true values are. So when I started looking at my true values, every day I'm a to-do list person, still am. I'm retired and I still do a to-do list. But up on the top of that to-do list, I wrote 4 words every day. I wrote the words curriculum, instruction, skills, and motivation. Every single day, I wrote those 4 words. I still have these to-do lists in a box in one of my closets. I love I'm the kind of to-do list person that if I do not start at my office and I go and do a few other things and I complete some things, I will write it on my to-do list just so I can mark it off to feel good about it. I use this to-do list to help me triage my day. That kid in the parking lot needs to be dealt with by someone at some time. But if I use all of my energy to deal with that kid parked, not illegally, but not appropriately in the back parking lot, then I'm not getting to curriculum, instruction, skills, and motivation. So what I did is when I created my list, I looked at my to-do list and I started putting either a C for curriculum, instruction, skill, or motivation beside each one of those. And I focused on those first when I had the most energy. I delegated the things as much as I could to people that could work on those other things, because as a building leader, you got to find out what your purpose is. Now, for the assistant principals in there, when I was assistant principal, I had curriculum, instruction and skills, motivation, and safety or supervision. I still had that when I was a principal, but I had delegated that to my 2 assistant principals. This safety of that school is priority 1, but I had others that was their main focus. So I did not focus on that other day. I made sure they did. As building leaders, that will help you. What you need to think of, though, is go back to that James Clear. How can you create habits that are simple, effective, satisfying, that will help you reach those goals? Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about is your own self. As a high school principal, I got burned out. I was a high school principal for 8 years. I did not think I was ever going to leave Scott County High School. I loved it. The reason I left is because on May 14th, 2007, I looked at my calendar and I was getting ready for the FFA banquet, and I counted 114 nights I stayed after school. I focused on other people's kids, focused on doing my job as well as I could for 114 nights. I called the superintendent. He had asked me about a month earlier if I wanted to be director of secondary. I told him no. I called him that night when I was tired, and I told him, do you still have that director of secondary schools position? He said, absolutely. It's the only decision I regret as an educator is I left the building. A couple things I want to talk to you about being leadership. 1, do not make life decisions when you're exhausted. I was absolutely exhausted and I made a life decision. The second, sometimes you're at the right place. I thought it was going to be a promotion to be director of secondary schools, and it was a promotion, but I wasn't as happy as being a principal. My appropriate place was being a principal of high school. That's where I had the most effect. When you think about your career, think about where you are and are you really happy there, or are you going to be happier somewhere else? Sometimes you're not going to be happier somewhere else. The other thing I want to talk about is your own personal health and fitness. You've got to recharge yourself. Think about when you're making decisions, what are your priorities in life? These are my 5 priorities. I don't have it with me, but I have a journal that I check on these every week. I check on, have I spent time with my family, and am I present when I'm with my family? Am I giving the right time to my faith, my fitness, my finances? Am I intellectual? I read every day for 30 minutes and I listen to a podcast every day. I'm 58 years old. I'm retired, but it's still important to me to continue to focus on my intellectual growth. These don't need to be your 5. You need to have your own 5, but you need to have balance in your life. This will help you develop balance. Have what's important to you in your school, but also have what's important to you in your personal life. All right, to finish up, you all could have selected a number of different groups to be with. Thank you very much for selecting mine. I'm going to do about a 1-minute shameless plug for what I do. I'm an independent contractor that helps schools become more perseverant and self-reliant. I do it through the work of Carol Dweck and growth mindset, but I also do it through methods. The way you ask questions, the way you evaluate, the way you set your room up, the way you set your policies up. I do it for teachers, I do it for parents, and I also do it for administrators. So if you're interested in that, there's my website, there's my email, my Twitter, my phone number. I'd love for you all to contact me and be part of your school system, but this is what I do. Thank you for choosing mine. I will stick around, and if you all have questions, I'll be glad to answer those questions. But Wallace, that kind of finishes I think I'm a few minutes early, and I apologize, but I think I'm talked at him enough.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I've been fortunate to hear you twice today, and I enjoyed both times. And it's a lot to think about, having a growth mindset and what it will look like in different schools and within different districts and whatnot. So, well, with that said, I will go ahead and stop reporting here. The next session will be let me just be sure that I get this right. Seems that round 9 is actually an optional session. some closing comments, some open question and answer, and P3 connections with the P3 team from KDE, and that'll be from 2:40 till 3 o'clock. So there is some time until that session begins. Again, thank you so much, Chip, for this wonderful presentation.